Three, two, one. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the Common View podcast. My name is Zach Goodman. I'm going to be your host, and joining me today is Joseph Codie Jones of Koycables.
Hi, Zach. Thanks for having me.
Hey, dude, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. How about you?
That's wonderful. So, for those of you that don't know, Joseph makes, first off, this dude is like one of the biggest audiophiles I've ever met. Like, when it comes to when I have questions about audio and gear, this is the guy I go to. And secondarily, he makes absolutely kick-ass headphone cables. So how about you tell us a little bit about Koy, how that got started, and that whole story?
Well, to be honest, it all kind of started with me wanting my own cables for my own gear. I took some time, did a little research, and kind of made my own evaluations of the margins and stuff like that, because it's a hobbyist market, and, the markups are pretty high and stuff like that.
Oh, no doubt, dude. I've seen cables going for more than the headphones they hook into.
Exactly, yeah. And a lot of that stuff is kind of overwhelming at first, but it's not rocket science. It's just broken down into the physical materials that make up a cable. And, I did some time, did some research, and started out ordering the materials for my own cables. And it went a lot better than I expected. And that kind of turned into making cables for a few friends and getting a little experience. And, after a while, I just thought, hey, maybe I could turn this into a gig. And it did a whole lot better than I expected. I took the time
That is always a good feeling when it does that, because you do this full time now, right?
I do, yeah. I do this 100% full time. I've been doing so for almost 4 months at this point, and still to this day I have way more work than I thought I ever would. So it's great,
dude. That is honestly, I think that's the small business owner dream, is to have an idea, have something you're passionate about, and have other people completely willing to pay you for it.
Right, exactly.
That's the big one. You started your guys' marketing, you started on Reddit, right?
Yeah, it started out originally, I kind of posted my own stuff, just showing it off, and it just went a lot better than expected. And, naturally people say, oh, if, will you make me a cable? Will you do this? Can you do this? And, you accept a few requests, put yourself up to a challenge, and luckily come out prevailing on the other side,
Absolutely, man. So what's the next step for y'all? Like, you've got the cables down. How long until I can buy a head unit with your name on it?
I think that'll be a ways out. But, I've just really tried to kind of expand my reach. I do controller mods and stuff like that. Also detachable mods, things of that nature, driver dampening, stuff like that.
And I know when we start getting into the hi-fi audio space, there's a lot of people who are going to start scratching their head.
Right.
Because I was in that same area when I first got into a semblance of hi-fi audio. How'd you start out getting interested in that and making that a passion of yours?
Well, Massdrop is a great tool.
Massdrop is wonderful at emptying my wallet. I'll give it that.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people see it that way. But they've done a lot of collaborations that kind of took really high-end products and essentially just put them out there at a more affordable price, like the 6XX, for example. And I feel like that's brought a lot of people into the world of hi-fi audio, including myself, actually.
Well, it's easier now than it used to be.
For sure, yes.
Because, well, first off, the internet exists.
Right.
Which makes it an infinitely more accessible market. And with digital media and stuff like FLAC files...
Right.
In the original days of MP3, that was about as hi-fi as you were getting out of digital media.
Yeah.
And before that, to get anything out of analog media, you had to go vinyl.
Yeah.
And you had to go expensive.
Right. You're always going to, in that realm, I mean, even to this day, if you're trying to, promote analog media, you're just going to, more often than not, spend some absorbent amount of money. But even that has come down to a more reasonable level.
Oh, no. I mean, absolutely. You can get, for people that are interested in vinyl, you can get a semi-decent setup in around the range of $500.
Yeah.
And to anybody who's going $500, that seems like a lot of money. Oh man, no, this is the rabbit hole.
It is for sure.
Like you're looking at the very top end, paying uh I've seen $1,000 cartridges, just the
Absolutely,
cartridges,
yeah. Just
the
the
thing that
cartridges.
holds the needle
Yeah.
on the vinyl player.
Yeah.
So you can dip into that to an extreme level.
Yeah, you certainly can. And that all ties into, the really, really high-end hi-fi setups. People will swear up and down that cables make an audible difference. And I've never really marketed my products that way. Everybody kind of has their own opinion on this topic. And, I have my own opinions as well, but they're simply that. They're opinions. But, you've got setups like that where you're spending $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 on a table, and you can just as easily spend half that much on the power cables and interconnects that drive it.
Well, yeah, and because I know reading through in my forays into hi-fi, when you read on forums, first off, everyone has a different opinion, and they are very vehement about it. But secondarily, the argument of do cables make a difference has been a long-standing one, and my answer's always been yes for a couple reasons. One, I have custom-made cables, and they do make a difference. Yeah. It's not just a placebo effect.
Right.
But secondarily, why would the medium that's carrying your sound for arguably the longest distance that it's going to travel from where it was created to where you hear it, why would that not make a difference?
Well, a lot of people will cite the argument that copper is the most conductive material, and the way we measure conductivity is in relation to copper, because copper is just by far the most conductive material, and there have been a lot of blind studies done, a lot of stuff like that, where, the results were either inconclusive or a claim that cables don't make a difference, and, you can take that with a grain of salt, perceive it as you will, but there are a lot of people out there who have spent a lot of money on gear or gone around and tested what they can, and, they'll swear up and down to you that they make a huge difference. And, I mean, who are you to say that they're wrong,
Yeah.
How can
well,
you?
I mean, because the specifics in it, because my favorite material when it comes to cable wire is copper.
Right.
Because, have you ever listened to silver wire?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, there is to me a tinier quality to it.
Right.
Which, right in that, the fact that the change in the wire material has changed what's going from the output to my ears, tells me that it has some bearing on the sound.
Yeah, of course. And people will, make those arguments. This material has this attribute. This material has this attribute. Most commonly, you're going to find either OCC, omnicontinuous cast copper, or SPC, silver-plated copper. And then you have Litz variants, which are essentially just like a specific way of casting and shaping the copper, which for, they can affect durability, lifespan, and, sonic qualities as well. And everybody has their own experience. They've tried their own things, and a lot of people, believe what they believe. And just like you said, this is just a very sensitive, controversial topic that is very polarizing.
Within that community, this is an incredibly sensitive topic to the average person.
Yeah.
They're like, how could people get upset over headphone cables? Well, man, the internet is a place. And if we've learned anything, you can get upset over almost anything.
You certainly can, yeah.
But because the other thing that ties into hi-fi, and that ties into the whole conversation of cables, do they make a difference, is hi-fi audio it's like training your ears. Right. It's the same thing if you want to become a great cook, or you want to tell the difference between different wines. You have to have exposure. Yeah. And the more exposure you get, the more nuanced you're going to be able to become. It's like a ear palate, for the lack of a better phrase.
Precisely, yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, and that, I think that's a portion of it that makes people a lot more hesitant to get into it. Because when I started into hi-fi, the irony of it is I was playing old punk pressings
yeah.
on a record table
Right.
being pumped out through a bunch of speakers that I'd bought at Goodwill and wired together into this insane configuration.
Mm-hmm.
But it did make an audible difference to me. And then once you know what you're listening to, because you look into audio, you're gonna hear, all right, well, what do the highs sound like? What do the lows sound like? What do the mids sound like? What's the bass like? What's its vocal quality?
Right.
What's the decibel range of this?
The timbre,
yeah. What bit rate compression do you want?
Right. Yeah.
And that can be intensely, if you don't know what you're looking at, it just becomes
it's overwhelming. Yeah.
It's completely overwhelming.
There are a lot of aspects that go into it. Starting from the media that you're using, whether you said you're a fan of analog, which tends to be a little harder to get into because it's more expensive, generally speaking, but you have that, and some people swear up and down that that's better. I personally am a big fan of analog. But
no, I mean,
we live in an age where, digital media is more plentiful than ever, and you have services like Tidal and stuff like that coming up where you can, instead of giving Spotify your $10 a month and getting your 256 compressed MP3s, you can get your FLAC files or your master quality audio files,
and for people that may be confused by this portion, your MP3 is your standard audio compression.
Right. The MP3 is the envelope that carries pretty much, I wouldn't say all, but like most people throughout most of their lives are going to be exposed to MP3 as, the 90% of all digital media format.
Mm-hmm. And so FLAC, it's what's that stand for? Flat loss audio compression?
It's the something lossless audio codec.
Oh, there we go.
I know the important part of it
is that lossless
it's a
audio codec.
Yeah.
So when you're taking a file, when you record a raw file, like what we're recording right now, it doesn't pop itself out in MP3. You get it in some weird, and what a codec is once again like the envelope. Well, no, the container's like the envelope. The codec is like the thing you use to decode the envelope.
Well, the codec is kind of like the language that the contents of the envelope are written in a sense.
And the most common one, the one that every audio platform on the internet reads is MP3.
Right.
So that hence, I mean, its popularity is because of its commonality.
Right.
That and the fact that it has a precedent in the market.
And it's just an extremely efficient codec. I mean, it's especially in the early days of when MP3 was catching on, it's just the reason you compress audio is the goal is to take away details and qualities from audio that won't really go noticed to the average person so that you can compress the file, and it just essentially comes down to taking up less space on your hard drive.
Exactly.
That's the idea.
Because you look at compressed and uncompressed video, compressed and uncompressed audio, there is a night and day difference in the size.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And you can even gain some improvement just straight up by compressing your audio, because it's going to move some of those things out that you might not have wanted in there in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, if that's what you go into it, that's the intention that you bring to it. Yeah, of course. I mean, you can.
But with FLAC, FLAC is, in my opinion, like the truest way to experience high-def audio in a non-analog format.
Yeah. Well, you have master quality audio, which is kind of new, just now catching on. But even master quality audio is played at the same bit rate as FLAC, so it's not really presenting any more data. It's just kind of a specially selected master, if that makes sense.
No, that does make sense, because I mean, anybody who listens to any type of music, hip-hop especially, techno especially, any sort of EDM, the master is what makes all the difference in how that music
any genre
comes out.
Of music, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
The master, it's hugely important, and you can take a great piece of music, a great album, and if it's just mastered by someone who doesn't know what they're doing, especially on high-end equipment, it'll just ruin it.
Because that's the caveat, is with high-end, you can push out so much more quality, but if you don't know what you're doing, you can absolutely ruin your listening experience at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely.
But for me, like, because I got into vinyl. I got into vinyl primarily when I originally did for the reason I think a lot of people get into vinyl, which is the collectability of it.
Yeah.
And the fact that, it's tactile media. Right. I own it. Mm-hmm. And it's just cool to have.
Yeah.
Like, and also the fact that you can find, especially for the music I was looking at, you would be surprised the amount of underground metal and underground punk pressings that you can find on vinyl and nowhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
because they never, I mean, you get vinyl or you get cassette tape.
Right.
And I was not getting into the cassette field.
Yeah, that's its whole thing in itself. But
yeah, I mean, you can pull hi-fi audio out of cassettes, but it's of my opinion that's like a way bigger investment for.
Yeah, and then above that you have reel-to-reel, which is something, it's essentially just a wider, higher density tape. That if you think about like an old projector where there's two big reels of tape, it plays it along a magnetic strip and extracts data that way. And a lot of people... I
can't imagine... Like, a lot of people are like, man, I can't imagine, like, listening to, like, 14 minutes of music and then going and flipping the record. And that's fair. Yeah. That's completely fair. There are times where I'm like, man, I wish this thing flipped it for me.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, there are ones that do that, but...
Yeah, there's auto cue and dual-sided record players and stuff like that. But you also have to consider that, like, not only flipping the record, I mean, you have the whole... There's a lot that comes along with physical media in general, especially vinyl. I mean,
well, yeah. I mean, getting into it, just the cleaning of the record,
right? Exactly.
Making sure dust is out of the grooves, making sure that your anti-skate's on right, making sure that the weight that your needle is pressing in is right, making sure that what's the other one? Static electricity. Yeah, having one of those static guns.
A negative ion charged gun. That's a whole thing in itself too. Yeah, there's just a lot that goes into it.
Because I think the first time that I sat down and I really listened to vinyl and I could notice a true difference is upstairs. I have a pressing of Fleetwood Mac's Rumors.
It's a great album,
and that it's a fantastic album. Yeah, but that has become pretty much my test piece. Mm-hmm. For any hi-fi audio.
Yeah, that's important to have.
The amount of detail. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's beautiful about vinyl that people don't get. I mean, is it good for on-the-go listening? No. Is it good for even background listening? Not particularly.
Right.
The point to me of vinyl, and this does sound like semi-elitist in a weird way, but is like, when you get audio of that quality and you've gone through all the steps to make sure that it's coming out in the way that you want it to, it opens up a whole new listening experience. Yeah. Like, it can become emotional in a sense because you're getting, you're hearing every note and frame and pluck and pick. Yeah. And the way it conforms to the space, the sound stage of it can make you feel like you're sitting directly in front of them in the studio as they're recording it.
With the proper gear, yeah.
Oh yeah, the proper gear is...
That's the big asterisk there.
A lot of that, because there's one thing I see, and it's the only thing I'll harp on, because my general rule of anything, and it applies to audio as well, is if you like your setup and it is producing what you want it to do, it is fine. Because there's always going to be people that tell you, well, you need to buy this, you need to buy that, you need to do this, you need to do that. Yeah. Ignore that. If you're happy with the quality of it, that's great.
Exactly. I completely agree. And there's a whole thing in the audio field where you have, objectivism, and people will say this piece of gear is better than this piece of gear. If you enjoy this, something's wrong with you. And I don't agree with that ideology at all.
No, but the one thing I see, and this is just for people, a lot of people buy these very, very cheap vinyl players. And I understand why. It's because you don't want to put a big investment into it, and that's completely fair. Yeah. But they buy these super cheap vinyl players that have, no adjustable arm, nothing like that, terrible cartridges. And what people don't realize is that's eating your physical media when you play it.
Yeah, absolutely.
With that needle, because these needles, the stylus,
right,
is a lot of them are diamond tipped.
Yeah,
And,
most all of them.
And as we know, diamond is an incredibly hard material.
Right.
Diamond is a much harder material than the vinyl that the music's been pressed into.
Yeah, of course.
So if your weight isn't on it right, you are literally digging grooves into it.
Yeah, that's the whole idea behind anti-skate is, if you have it's not actually a centrifugal force, but more like a momental force. If the needle's being pulled inward when the record is rotating, and if you don't have the proper anti-skate measures, then it's going to be dragging against one side of the groove. And no matter how good your gear is, to some extent, you're always, records have a limited lifespan, no matter how good the gear you use is. But yeah, using these old suitcase players and Crosleys, things like that.
Yeah, we don't talk about Crosley.
Yeah. But
because especially because I think the way a lot of people, at least from my generation, got into vinyl was also our parents had vinyl. Our parents were one of the last generations that actually bought vinyl as physical media because it was what was out at the time.
Right, for sure.
So my first introduction to it was my dad had this big collection of, classic 60s, 70s rock, and he had a Dead record, he had some of Yes's pressings from the 70s, and those carry some value these days, especially.
Absolutely, yeah.
And to take that, I personally, if I'm gonna play those records, something from that time period and something that also has the sentimental value of being attached to a family member, I want to make sure I'm not destroying it when I do that.
Yeah. You want to do so as carefully as possible, of course.
Yeah.
But
no, it's a whole world, man. I mean,
it is. It's an insane world. It's very deep, and it's very easy to spend a lot of money.
No, that's getting up there with that, and getting up there with things like any sort of custom hardware.
Right.
When it gets into it, whether it be tools, whether it be audio, whether it be computers.
Yeah.
When you get into that level, you can really drop down the rabbit hole of...
Yeah, you certainly can. Any kind of hobbyist market,
Any hobbyist market, yeah.
For sure.
No, because I think we made mention of this before we started recording, but to segue into computers and things of that nature, because it's, in a way, integrally tied to audio.
Yeah, for sure.
AMD is freaking killing it.
Yeah, they are. They're definitely killing it right now. They're closer to Intel than they have been in a decade. And,
so, to those of you listening, AMD and Intel are pretty much the two major well, not pretty much. They are the two major, if not the two only manufacturers of CPUs.
Right.
And a CPU is your central processing unit in a computer. And for a long, long time, Intel has ran that market.
Absolutely.
It has been, my build's an Intel.
Yeah,
and
so is mine. Yeah.
I've built Intel for as long as I can remember. You always paid the price premium.
Yeah.
But you got the highest performance. And to see AMD, who's the underdog for so many years, be just creeping in here and taking their market share to that degree.
And their stock is doing really well right now.
That was the one thing, dude. Anyone who worked with me in a kitchen 6 months ago heard this spiel where I was looking at them and going, if you have money to invest it in AMD.
That would have been the time to do it.
That would have been the time to do it because... And I'm mad at myself that I didn't take my own advice on that one, because I would have made a lot of money.
Yeah, well, it's easy to refute the claims. I mean, we've since the first gen of Ryzen, people have expected AMD to close the gap a lot more than they have, and I think a lot of people saw the numbers that they released 5-6 months ago, claiming that they would be within 5 to 10% of Intel in every market, in every capacity possible. That a lot of people took it with a grain of salt, and you can't really blame them for that. But
no, considering some of the things we've been promised in various releases, I'm trying to remember what the last big release was that just got bombed. And I want to say for AMD, it was coming right off the heels of The Vega cards.
The are you talking about Radiant 7, the graphics card?
No, not the Radiant 7s. The Vega 64s, Vegas 64s.
That is a card, yeah.
That is a card.
Yeah, yeah.
No, because they were talking up the I probably butchered that name because I haven't looked at AMD's graphics cards profile in so long.
Right.
But
no, I think you're right. Vegas 64 is a card. That is one area that they still do fall behind a bit as graphics. But,
yeah, I mean, but then again, they're competing with a completely different beast, which is Nvidia.
Right.
Though at the same time, Nvidia got in a lot of stockholder problems, specifically when they released the RTX line.
Oh, really?
Because when a graphics card is in essence the eyes of your computer.
Fair,
It is what translates all those ones and zeros, and well, no one actually programs in binary, but it's what translates all those little bits of code into colors and pixels and shapes. And the general rule of thumb is the better quality card you have, the better it's going to do that. You'll get higher resolutions, you'll get better frame rates.
Yeah.
You know, when you're talking about TV and video, 30 FPS is the benchmark. 30 FPS is the standard.
Right.
When it comes to PCs, 30 FPS is something to be yelled at.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
I'm running 100 and some change.
Yeah, I run 240 hertz on my 1080p panel and 75 hertz on the other two. Yeah, absolutely. Integrated graphics have gotten really good.
Well, because AMD was also kind of on the forefront of that with they integrated
back
graphics
in the
into their CPUs, and some of them, I mean, they were good enough to play Minecraft.
Yeah.
Which, we're gonna be real, for all the money that's spent on these big expensive rigs, at the end of the day, as long as it can run Minecraft,
that's a standard to behold. Yeah.
You haven't the time period of yes, but can it run Crysis is at an end.
Yeah, it's over now. Yeah,
because the answer is always no.
Days.
Nothing can run Crysis.
Yeah. That was a game for sure.
But that was a game.
Yeah,
that was one of the most unoptimized pieces of trash I ever saw. Like, it was so cool when it came out, but the optimization on it was so poor.
God awful, yeah.
But when Nvidia announced the RTX, they announced something really cool, which is, so when you go see a movie, you go see a film, one of the more recent Star Wars is an excellent example of this. They have on it what's called ray tracing.
Right.
And they've been doing this in movies for years, which what ray tracing does, especially in 3D animation, is in most animations, you set your light source as an object, and you angle it.
It's static. It stays
so
in place.
If you have a box and in the top right corner is your light source, it's going to cast a cone-shaped source from that right corner out into your box.
Right.
What ray tracing does is, in essence, it simulates the actual sun's rays. So not only are your shadows more realistic, but it also can simulate the bouncing of those rays onto various objects.
Right.
Which leads, when done properly, to just beautifully rendered, just gorgeous lighting on things.
Yeah.
The problem is, up until this point, it was impossible to do that in real time.
Yeah.
And they had to spend quite a bit of time running that. You had to get a very big, very powerful workstation, and it was going to be down for 6, 8, 10, 12 hours as you ray traced a scene. So when they came out and they said, hey, we've got real-time ray tracing, people lost their frickin' minds.
Yeah, it was pretty groundbreaking for sure. They did it through their dedicated cores in the RTX cards.
The Turing cores.
Yeah, that do it, and it enables a lot of stuff. You get more realistic lighting, shadows, reflections.
It also worked with sound as well, which was cool. It worked to ray trace sound echoes.
Yeah.
Which, if you're using headphones when you're playing games, if you're playing something like Call of Duty, Fortnite, Rainbow Six, the ability to hear becomes paramount.
Absolutely.
because you're getting the bounce of the guy walking down the hallway towards you, and you know where he is, and he can't hear you, so he doesn't know where you are. That's your jump.
It's positional awareness.
That's pro gamer strats, bro.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But when they came out and they started doing the testing on the RTX cards, Nvidia took a hit. They took a big stock loss for a little while there. Well, because it wasn't what it was promised.
Yeah.
They were promised real-time ray tracing, but what they didn't realize is it was crashing it down to, 20, 30 frames a second. And the worst part is, unless you were standing there staring at it, if you turned it off, you didn't really notice the difference.
Yeah, and still to this day, I mean, a game has to be specifically optimized to support it, first of all.
Yeah, which is more stuff on the developer backend.
Exactly. And not only that, but for a few games that are well optimized for it, you can see a visual difference, but it's very debatable, and most people would say that it is not worth the tax that it puts on your hardware.
No, and on top of that, there's the price premium that goes with it. Yeah. But because when AMD originally announced 7 nanometer, their 7 nanometer process, which what that is it's the size of the die within the unit itself. There's a physical silicon die. It's normally maybe the size of like a fingernail or a thumbnail.
Yeah, something
that is right. Physically within there. And they have to write things onto it, and they write it down to the nanometer.
Yeah.
And so the 10 nanometer, and no, not even 10, 12 nanometer has been the standard for a while. I think everything out of Intel's most recent line is 12 nano. And then they were going, okay, well, then we're going to do 10 nano. We're going to shrink it down. We're going to pack more into a smaller space, which means we can pack more into the same space.
Right.
And then AMD came out and went, nope, we're doing 7. What's up, son?
Well, I think the way they went about it, I'm definitely not a hardware engineer, but they split the central processing itself into 2 separate units. I think it's 2 7-nanometer processes, and they use what's called Infinity Fabric, which is like just a very short distance of communication between the two, and to the operating system it appears as one logical processor. I don't know a lot about how they did it.
Oh, no, that's starting to get well beyond the realm.
Yeah.
Of things I know personally.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a hardware engineer, but at any rate, AMD is doing well, for sure.
AMD is doing very well.
Yeah.
Which leads to, more recent news. So for the longest time, Twitch has been the unchallenged platform. I mean... For
streaming, yeah.
Yeah, where else did you stream on? You don't... Facebook Live?
Yeah,
like some people do it.
A little traction. Yeah.
Some people do it.
Yeah.
People tried to stream on YouTube for a while. That went fairly poorly. Yeah. There's a lot of things that can be said about YouTube, and because
for sure.
I like monetization, I'm not gonna say them.
Yeah, that's probably wise.
Yeah. No, they're a little touchy about it. Yeah. Understandably so.
Increasingly so.
That's a whole different finagle is the YouTube monetization market and where it's at right now.
Absolutely.
But so then Mixer came out. And Mixer was Microsoft's answer to Twitch.
Right.
They went, well, why do you have the monopoly on this market? And that, to me, as a business owner, and I'm sure to you as a business owner, is it... Once you own your own business, it puts a little bit more depth into how you view things because you start viewing it from the perspective of an owner of a business.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure.
And then seeing them go, well, you guys have a monopoly on this market, but what if we were able to do things differently, better? Because the problem you get into when you have something that has a monopoly on the market is they no longer have to listen to their customer base.
Yeah, and they lose incentive to improve.
They lose all incentive to improve because what are you going to do? You're going to go buy somewhere else? You can't.
Exactly, yeah. You're forced to use their
I mean, we can talk about freaking Time Warner Cable and Duke Power like that all day long.
Yeah, of course.
Those are 2 companies that seriously need to improve their services, but it's like, who else is going to turn my power on? How else am I going to get internet?
Yeah.
So you take what you can get. So they were in that situation for a while, and then they came out with arguably the ballsiest power move of the year, which is they snatched Twitch's crown jewel right out from under them. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Ninja, who is a streamer, who is the guy who, in a sense, Fortnite might owe a lot of its success to.
Yeah, that's definitely a fair assessment.
He is the most viewed streamer of all time. He had, like, was it LeBron James he played a game of Fortnite with?
He played with quite a few celebrities.
LeBron
James,
he was on
Chance the Rapper.
He was on the Ellen Show.
Yeah.
Like, this guy blew up in a way that I don't think anybody who had been watching the progression of, like, media influencers thought he was going to.
Yeah, it was unprecedented, for sure.
Well, I mean, he was a very good gamer, which did help, but I don't know particularly how he got such a hold on people.
I don't know either, honestly. That would be
because I mean, no offense to the guy, but I've watched his streams, and at this point, he has so much money, he doesn't even need to interact with his audience.
Yeah, not anymore. Not at this point.
No, like, I mean, most people starting out, I streamed for a little bit, and I got out of it because monetizing my only stress relieving hobby was not.
It's not enjoyable.
It wasn't enjoyable anymore, and it wasn't healthy.
And it's just a really hard market to tap into.
It's an incredibly hard market to break into. And I hate to say this, especially if you're male.
Yeah.
Because you better be charismatic or good looking or the best darn player anyone's ever seen. If you're not one of those three, you're out, dude.
Yeah.
You
gotta have something to offer, something unique for sure.
But the Mixer came and they offered Ninja obviously a whole lot of money.
Yeah. I don't know if they ever disclosed exactly how much.
No, but you know you're talking millions and some digits. Like, to stream exclusively on Mixer. And I think that's going to be really interesting to see where that goes. Because what you're going to end up with, to use an analogy, is a Facebook MySpace situation. Okay?
Yeah.
So to put it this way, MySpace, when MySpace came out, for all of you scene kids that still remember this, that was the spot. That was the only social media network of its time.
Yeah.
And then Facebook came out, and MySpace didn't take it seriously. They thought Facebook was going to be a flash in the pan.
Right.
And they refused to innovate. And then Zuckerberg, for whatever you can say about him, that man is a brilliant CEO.
Yeah, he's a good businessman.
He's an excellent businessman. And he's very, very smart at what he does.
Yeah.
And he just blew. Like, they put so much into Facebook. And nowadays, you know, we talk about MySpace as if it doesn't exist anymore, because in all reality, it doesn't.
Yeah. Does it even actually still exist?
I have no idea whether you can even go to myspace.com.
I don't either. And I mean, that just goes
honestly,
to show,
I would have sold that domain already. I would not have hung on to that.
Yeah,
but,
for sure.
But I wonder if we're going to see the same situation, because Twitch had the stranglehold. Twitch was the spot.
Yeah.
And now that they have competition, the question is, what are you guys going to do? Are you going to innovate and make yourself better and listen to community feedback? Or are you going to sit on the fact that you're the biggest in the game while Microsoft hopefully innovates in ways that you couldn't before, and then they're going to take everything from you?
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, is if you are looking into, you know, the stock market in a sense, this is, if you can draw the parallel to the MySpace Facebook situation,
right,
and draw that parallel to the Twitch Mixer situation, if you have stock in Microsoft, and if you don't, maybe get some. I don't know how much you want to listen to me on that. I am not a stockbroker.
Microsoft has kind of always been a safe bet, in my opinion. I think their stock is quite valuable at this point.
It's valuable in the sense that it doesn't degrade.
Yeah.
Because a lot of tech is almost always a good investment.
Yeah. Increasingly so, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's going to be around, and it's going to continue to be around, and the days of these super huge companies not being able to change with the times is coming to an end very quickly.
I agree. I completely agree. And I think that that's a good thing, you know. It's good for the end consumer. I mean,
no, it is wonderful for the end user, and it's good when you can see that system work for the consumer as opposed to against it.
Exactly.
Because the flip side of that is when you have all these big industries, okay, they generally don't work for the consumer.
No, not at all.
We see this all throughout the market, and that's one of the reasons a lot of people have a problem with the whole capitalist system in and of itself these days.
Yeah.
Is it stopped being a place where the market decides, and the market meaning the consumer decides.
Right.
The consumer demands, the market produces.
Right.
We've reached a point where it's flip-flopped.
Yeah.
And now it's whatever the market produces is what the consumer gets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And they do it in such a way that the consumer starts to demand whatever thing it is that the market is producing.
Right. I mean, competition drives innovation. You know, it's good for both parties if you don't have things like monopolies, and you definitely don't have these systems like we have in the United States today where, you know, big corporations are being tied into governmental policies and things like that. And I mean, you know, that's a whole different discussion, but the bottom line is innovation is good for everyone, and competition drives innovation.
Without a doubt, because if we didn't have, look at the innovation of the last 20 years, the last 20 is actually a fair one.
Yeah.
Because I remember growing up and my first cell phone being one of those crappy razor flips.
Yeah.
And now we're walking around with kids that have iPhone 10s that can shoot better video off their phone than I can off a DSLR camera.
Yeah, 4K 30, I think, is what they shoot, right?
That's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, yeah.
And that's the sort of innovation that you want in two senses. It's the innovation you want as a consumer because they're constantly making new products.
Right.
They're making products that people want to use. They're making things that people want to see.
Yeah.
And also from any business standpoint, any investment standpoint, and I think that's something people need to pay more attention to, because in this country, barring a massive shift in how we are structured, you have 3 ways to make money.
Okay.
3 reliable ways to make money.
Okay.
In a sense, because the 4th is always win the lottery.
Yeah.
But
which is statistically virtually impossible.
Yes. So you inherit that money from your parents. You go and you get a degree in a high-paying field, and you live at the bare minimum, and you stack that cash.
Yeah, saving, yeah.
Or you invest. And the idea that investment is you can invest in multiple ways.
Yeah.
Also, you don't have to, when we say invest, it doesn't necessarily mean go to a stockbroker, put your money in a stock. You can invest in businesses by becoming part of that business.
Yeah, private loans, things of that nature, I mean.
Yeah, or just in the small business world, something I've learned is the amount of business-to-business connections that you have infinitely improves your growth and your ability to sell your product, because you want those connections.
Yeah.
It gives you more of a face in the marketplace, and also for every single person you have that owns a business that's willing to recommend your business, they're now recommending your business to all of their consumers.
Yeah, I mean, we live on a social planet, you know.
And just look at social media. The currency that social interaction can bring is infinitely more valuable than the money. In a sense, you know, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
But I mean, the idea that you can't invest for whatever reason, to me, is ludicrous.
Yeah.
Because like I've been working class my entire life.
Right.
You know, I never had stuff handed to me.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I was helped by my parents, but when I say helped by my parents, I'm talking the way that most parents help their kids, not in the way that, like...
raising you properly.
Not in the way that not a small loan of $1 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Precisely.
So, and I have still found the ability to take money and put it into investments, and you don't have to do a ton at a time.
No, you don't.
And the other thing that I think is important is with social media, you can build these patterns. And you can see these patterns in people's lives. And you can see what the new hot and upcoming thing is. And people want to invest into that.
Yeah.
And that is called speculative investing.
Yeah.
And it's the dumbest thing you can possibly do because it's just gambling.
In a sense, yeah, it is. Yeah.
Like the amount of money people lose in the stock market by speculative investing.
Speculation, yeah.
Like the goal of an investment is not to get rich overnight, and if your goal in investing is to get rich overnight, you're doing it wrong. Go buy scratch offs. Your chances are better.
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
The goal of investment should be
slow, steady returns.
Slow, steady returns.
Yeah, absolutely.
And being able to diversify where your money is, because at that point, barring an entire crash of the U.S. economy, which we can talk about the unlikelihood of that, despite what many doomsayers have said for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, the dollar is the median value of currency. I mean, it's not very likely.
And as much as people want to argue that the dollar has been devalued as a currency, we're still spending it.
Yeah.
We're still holding that market share. The United States is still holding that big economic share.
Yeah. For better or for worse.
That's definitely something to put in there, for better or for worse. And sometimes you're not quite sure what is what on that one.
For sure.
But the ability to just put some money in and forget about it and let it build wealth for you is a beautiful thing.
It's an attractive concept.
Because, once again, and by the way, if the entire U.S. economy collapses and the dollar becomes worthless, we're going to have a lot bigger problems than you lost your money in investments, because at that point, your money's going to be worthless anyway.
Yeah.
You better start stockpiling bottle caps and beans.
Yeah, something, honestly.
But
it's hard to wrap your head around that, you know. I think
it's a complex world.
It is, yeah. I'm not sure. I think a lot of people don't really know what they would do in a situation like that. I mean, I can't say that I do.
Oh, no. I mean, you have two camps on that.
Yeah.
You have the camps of people who are going to be honest and say, I have no idea what I'd do in that.
Yeah.
And you have the Boogaloo brothers who are like, hell yeah, we're going to get our rifles. We're going to go to the streets. Yee-hoo!
Yeah, they claim they're prepared.
Yeah, it's like, listen, man. Like, if you can't run a hill without getting winded, how are you going to survive in the crash of society?
Yeah.
Like, you can't just go shoot your way out of it.
Yeah, no,
you're going to run out of bullets eventually, or you're going to run into someone who's a better shot.
Yeah. There's more to it than piling arms.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can't eat bullets.
Yeah, you can't.
You can't eat bullets, and bullets don't purify water. Bullets don't provide electricity.
They don't. That's right.
You need to have those sort of skill sets. Not saying that you need to go out today and learn what to do in case of the collapse of society. Okay?
Yeah.
Because once again, the chances of that are so slim. And yes, they're propagated by the fact that we do have a very apocalypse narrative going on right now.
Yeah, and we live in a very polarized society.
We live in an intensely divided society. Yeah. The United States, from everything I've seen, has not been this tribalistic since the 70s.
Yeah,
Vietnam was the last point in time where we had this much red on blue hands at throats.
Yeah. It's definitely a fair assessment.
And I don't know. Have you ever heard of a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk?
I feel like I've heard the name, but
he's a tech investor. He's a podcaster. He's a business guy. Awesome dude. But he makes a quote, because for a long time my thoughts on this were, well, social media made us like this. And he said something very interesting, which is social media didn't make you like this. That platform didn't make you be an asshole. Okay? Yeah. You chose to be an asshole. Right. Social media didn't make us worse people. Social media exposed us for the people we were this entire time.
Yeah. It's just easier to propagate information.
It is. It's easier to propagate information. It becomes incredibly politicized. It becomes right, left, very quickly, and if you're not on my team, you're on the other team, and if you're on the other team,
Right.
you're a terrible person.
Yeah.
And some of that is true to a degree. I think no one can disagree with the fact that extremism, and I'm not talking like, I'm talking hard right.
Right.
I'm talking literal Nazis, which is a phrase that's thrown around way too much.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Nazis are Nazis and Nazis are scum.
Yeah.
Okay?
Right.
You can't call everyone you don't like a Nazi.
No, yeah, absolutely.
And the problem with that isn't that you shouldn't call out people that you feel have harmful ideals. Because if someone is propagating hate or is propagating that sort of violent rhetoric, there's no reason not to call them out. There's no reason not to have action, because take your ability to act and use it while you can.
Right. Well, I think that any kind of extremism, regardless of the cause, propagating hate upon anyone, denying anyone basic human rights, or seeing humanity as anything except a broad spectrum of equality, anything like that is objectively wrong. But it's hard to really, argue that with people who feel that way. I do think that people should stand up for what they believe in, absolutely. But
and I mean, this gets difficult because to me there are some objectively wrong viewpoints.
Yeah.
Fascism to me is an objectively wrong viewpoint.
Absolutely, yeah.
At the same time, any totalitarian system I feel is an objectively wrong viewpoint.
Exactly, yeah.
And totalitarian systems run the whole gambit of the political spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
well, that's what I mean by, saying extremism in any form.
Well,
regardless.
that's the other thing is we have to be careful to clarify, because you've been on the internet.
Yeah.
You know how it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
But oh, hey there. One of my pet rats is out. Hey, little buddy. You want to come say hi?
I had rats as a kid.
Honestly, dude, I don't get why people don't like rats.
No, I don't either, honestly.
Like, I mean, I understand that people in 14th century medieval Europe would disagree with us.
Yeah, I think maybe it comes down to like a survivalist type thing, even regardless of how true it might actually be. I don't know, but maybe back in the day we kind of associated it with uncleanliness or carrying disease or something.
Oh yeah, but there's a distinct difference between like a rat you find in a New York City sewer system, and a rat that's bred to be a pet.
Yeah, domesticated.
Yeah, domesticated rats are pretty much tiny dogs.
Yeah, and I think from my understanding, they're actually pretty clean animals too.
They are. I mean, they groom themselves nigh continuously.
Yeah,
and they're just nice. I think they're neat.
Yeah, no,
we have a running joke in this house of bringing up the topic of talking about rats at completely inappropriate times. And it's like, but why not? Look at them. They're cute.
They are.
There are people that don't think they are, and those people, I'm sorry, you're completely wrong.
Yeah.
But then again, I mean, I understand there are problems with them. Like, we have male and female rats, and one of the females got out and they ended up breeding, and then she gave birth to a litter, and then you start to see how rats act around babies, and it can be
a little unsettling.
Yeah,
I can understand
but
that.
there's, I mean, at the end of it, they make good pets.
Yeah.
They do. They're affectionate, they're intelligent, they all have their own personalities.
Yeah.
I don't know, and they're pretty easy to care for.
Yeah.
I mean, you need a lot less space than a dog.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely imagine. Jen and I have wanted a pet possum for quite a while.
If you want someone who wants a pet possum badder than anyone I've ever met in my life, my girlfriend Emily.
Yeah.
Wants a pet possum so badly. We have artwork in our room that was done by a possum sticking its little paws in paint.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've to my understanding, they're actually kind of hard to get a hold of
Well,
domesticated opossums.
you have to be in like wildlife rehabilitation.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't just go and pick a possum up off the street as much
Yeah,
as
of
some
course.
people would like to.
Yeah.
But if you rehab wildlife,
Mm-hmm.
you completely have the ability to, you know, hold them and rehab them until the time that they are fine with going back into society.
Okay.
And you can do that with a menagerie of animals at that point.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, dude, no,
I've always been curious about, you know, like literally purchasing a possum, like a domesticated possum.
I don't think those exist.
Yeah, I don't either. That was my point.
Because I don't think you can actually domesticate a possum. I mean, you
Yeah.
kind of can.
Mm-hmm. But
'Cause
you see all these people online. You know, Jen follows a ton of these people on Instagram and stuff that just, you know, show pet possums and stuff like that. And I've always wondered how exactly that works. Like,
Most of them are going to be people who are rehabbing the wildlife.
right.
And the times they get to keep them is when they've been in a serious enough injury
Mm-hmm.
that you can't release them back into the wild because they wouldn't survive.
Right.
Like if they have permanent brain damage or are missing a foot or
badly injured.
and
Yeah.
you can't rehab them and let them go,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, you get to keep them forever.
Okay.
But that's another animal that gets really bad raps is a possum.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
dude,
of course.
be kind to possums, okay? They eat ticks and spiders. They
Yeah.
can't give you rabies. They're North America's only marsupial.
Wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And they're nice.
Yeah.
I used to, when I lived in downtown Raleigh,
Mm-hmm.
I lived on the second floor of this old building back in the kind of like, I don't know what you'd call it, the like historic area. Buildings that were, 100 some years
I
old.
think it's literally called historic downtown.
It might be.
Yeah, I think
But
so.
we had a fire escape on the second floor that I used to go back out and smoke on.
Uh-huh.
And there was, I would go up there, and about once every week, there would just be this big ass possum sitting in a corner.
Yeah.
And I kept trying to make friends with it, and it wanted none of that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they
skittish.
don't actually bite.
Yeah, no,
They'll
yeah.
hiss, but they will not bite you.
Unless forced to, is my
Yeah, no, I
understanding.
mean, if you're
Yeah.
threatening their babies, that's one thing, but you
Yeah,
should
yeah.
never get in between an animal and its babies. It's
No.
like the people you see that get in between, bear cubs and the mom.
Yeah. No,
It's like
that's
you're-
asking for trouble.
Yeah, you're asking to get
Yeah.
messed up.
Yeah.
Like, that thing is going to tear you apart. I don't know how much Yogi Bear you've been watching, but, like,
yeah.
they're not cuddly.
Bears
They're
are vicious
wild animals.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, down here, we don't have to worry too much because we have black bears, and black bears in the gambit of bears are
Reasonably low on the spectrum.
reasonably low on the spectrum, and they're
Yeah.
more scared of you than you are of them because
Right.
they're not that big.
Yeah, yeah.
Grizzlies, on the other hand,
Totally different story.
completely different story.
Yeah.
Grizzlies scare the hell out of me.
Yeah, they do me too.
Because, like, a black bear, okay, you make some loud noises, you flap your arms, that thing's going to leave you alone. A grizzly, you can shoot it and it's going to keep coming at you.
Yeah, I've heard they can take several shots.
Yeah, the most effective tool against that is bear mace.
Really?
Yeah, because they have such sensitive olfactory nerves.
Mm.
That mace, it gives you enough time to at least get out of there.
Yeah. I've heard that was why the 44 Magnum was developed.
To kill bears?
Yeah, they wanted a round with enough stopping power. Maybe it was the 500 even.
I have
actually.
the Winchester 500.
No,
or
not the Win 500. The 500 Magnum. I believe it's a Magnum.
500
cartridge.
mag?
Yeah, the Smith 500 you can get.
I don't
I
know,
think it's
dude.
a Magnum
I've
cartridge.
never taken to shooting that high of caliber.
Yeah.
Like, I've
Oh, it's
shot...
insane. It's like the recoil. It's over your head after you fire the weapon. Like it's,
My grandfather was in the Coast Guard for
Mhm.
a period of time after he got out of the military.
right.
He was in the Air Force all through Korea and Nam, and then retired and went to the Coast Guard.
Mm-hmm.
And his service weapon there was a Smith & Wesson Model 66,
66. Okay.
which is a 6-cylinder revolver.
yeah,
And it's
Classic
it's 357 mag.
yeah.
And we went out to the range to shoot that,
Mm-hmm.
and I did not like that one bit.
Oh, that's still a lot of recoil. 357.
The recoil's one thing. I just don't like revolvers in general.
Yeah.
The gas, the
Yeah.
off-gassing from it.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, if you've ever had your finger bit by the off-gas.
That's harsh.
Yeah, and like, I mean, big calibers can be fun,
Mm-hmm.
but shooting them repeatedly I mean, your wrist hurts, your shoulder hurts,
Yeah.
it starts to hurt. And if
Yeah.
you're doing any sort of meaningful training, you're not going out putting 10 rounds down range and stopping.
Right.
You're doing 2, 3, 4, 5, 600 rounds in a trip.
Yeah.
Up to
Practice makes
1,000
perfect.
plus, depending on if you've got all day and private land.
Yeah, exactly.
And that, at the end of that, I mean, I went on a shooting trip for 4th of July, and I came back, and my whole shoulder, like, just looked like someone kicked me in it, because we were shooting, we had everything there from your standard AR-15s to my weird communist heresy hybrid of an AR chambered in 7.62.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, that I built myself, and
That's
that was
cool,
that was a learning experience in gunsmithing and metal tolerance.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is a field that I feel is underappreciated in the trade services.
Yeah, there's I mean, fortunately, with the internet nowadays, at least, there's plentiful knowledge out there, but there's a huge world of AR building and
Oh no,
stuff
that's how I learned almost everything, and I bought it as a completed piece, and the only thing left on it that's stock is the lower receiver.
Okay.
Pretty
much the whole gun.
Every other bit of that gun has been changed out. But
I think that's what's serialized, isn't it? The lower?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you actually...
The lower is what's registered as the firearm.
Right, exactly, yeah.
That's what you have to go through an FFL to buy.
Right.
Any sort of... anything else you can purchase at, off the internet. But, I mean, the reason the lower is the serialized part is the lower is what contains your trigger, and without a trigger, all a gun is a big shiny stick.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah.
But, because we were shooting that, we had, my buddy has a M1 Garand.
Nice.
That we took out there, like an old school. It was
weapon.
Issued in the 40s.
Wow.
And saw combat.
Really?
You can tell when you open it up. Like, the wear marks are in there.
Mm-hmm.
He treats that thing like his baby.
Yeah, that's definitely a gun.
He had that. We had a 50 cal black powder muzzle loader out there.
Wow.
It failed to fire. I have it in pieces around the house right now because I'm redoing it for him.
You said a 50 cal muzzle
yeah.
loader?
But I mean, in muzzle loading terms, that's
not
not much.
Yeah,
that's not 50 cal like a 50 BMG is a 50 cal.
Yeah, I hear you.
Like, that's a shoulder breaker of a gun right there.
Yeah. Well, Barrett's, they have the whole spring tension system. That's why they're so good at dealing with recoil.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I mean, anytime you can see someone shoot something that's pretty much like a small armored vehicle cannon and shoot it standing up, someone did something really good in the ergonomics of that.
Right. It's a well-designed weapon.
It is a very well-designed weapon. It's one that I have absolutely no use for, but would still want to own if money was not an object.
Yeah.
I mean, it would spend its time as a wall hanger, and I would just sit there and look at it and giggle.
Yeah.
Because that is the true giggle switch right there, is just being able to throw a piece of lead over a mile accurately.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong.
That big piece of lead.
Yeah, I mean, there's skill involved in that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
No, and that, like, we're gonna try to stay out of the topic of gun control in America, okay? Because that's not
controversial.
That is not something I want to touch at this time.
Yeah.
But I will say this. For people that own firearms, your job as a firearms owner is to be a responsible firearms owner.
Absolutely.
And if you are not getting professional training with that firearm,
then
you are not a responsible firearms owner.
Absolutely.
Because the amount of accidents and just people doing stupid stuff with guns. I'm not talking about violent acts.
I'm talking about mistakes.
But mistakes or just
handling.
Mistakes, handling, the amount of that can be prevented.
It's tremendous.
By receiving professional training. And the other part about receiving professional training is if you receive professional training, you're also going to talk about the legal aspects of gun ownership.
Yeah.
Which means you also suddenly become very aware of what you can and cannot legally do with that gun.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know how many people I've met that have the idea that you can just point a gun at somebody.
No.
That's a crime.
Brandishing, that's a crime.
That's a crime.
Yeah.
Not only can you go to jail for that, but you can have your Second Amendment rights revoked for that crime.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
The idea that, if you have a gun and you're drinking, that gun needs to not be anywhere near you.
Yeah.
Not only from a safety perspective, but from a legal perspective. And unfortunately, I would argue the same thing goes with any intoxicant.
Yeah, I would agree.
Anything that can change your perception to that degree, keep it away from firearms.
Absolutely.
Like, if you own one and you're trained in one and you have it for whatever reason you have it, and you're doing it safely, I give you all the kudos in the world.
Absolutely.
Because there are far too many people out there that give many gun owners a really bad name.
Yeah.
The whole idea that everyone who owns a firearm is an NRA member with Confederate flag bumper stickers is ridiculous to me. That's one thing I've seen recently that brings me a lot of hope. Is organizations like the Gun Owners of America, Armed Equality, which is an LGBT gun owners group.
Okay. That's interesting that exists.
Multiple ones. The Pink Pistols is another one, but
Pink Pistols, that's awesome.
Hey, dude, they knew their naming when they were coming for it.
That's good.
The SRA, the Socialist Rifle Association, which we're not going to get into the fact that we're not getting there. I'm not gonna talk about the politics of that. But
we live in an age where guns are a pretty polarizing thing.
Yeah, but the fact that, because I think the reason that a lot of people dislike firearms, other than the obvious reason of they kill people, and I think we're fooling ourselves if we want to act like they do anything other than that.
Of course, yeah.
The gun was invented to kill.
Yeah.
The primary usage of it is to kill.
Absolutely, yeah.
But the fact that I think a lot of people dislike it because it's polarized so hard to a very hurtful image on the right, that while the NRA, and we can be thankful for some of the legal representation we have from them, they are not the Lorax of gun owners. They do not speak for the trees in this case.
No, they don't.
No, they are their own thing with their own opinions. But the fact that we're starting to see more active, well-trained, well-thought-out people on the left end of the spectrum owning firearms, to me, that is nothing but a positive attribute.
Yeah.
Because, the same reason that you vote against firearms nowadays tends to be the same reason you vote against a Republican if you vote against one. Or the same reason you vote for firearms is the same reason you vote against Democrats.
Yeah.
It's become a party issue.
Yeah, and a large one at that.
And the irony of it is, if you look at the foundations of the parties, if you remove social issues from it, they're the same thing.
I definitely could see it being narrowed down that way.
I realized that was a very blanket statement, and it's something that in a couple podcasts from now we're going to have some people on and we're going to talk much more in depth about that. So I'm not going to make the hi-fi audio podcast about politics.
Well, I might not be the most qualified to talk
I am not the most qualified, and that's why we have some wonderfully qualified people coming on to talk about it.
Yeah, I look forward to that. But.
Well, I don't. That's the other thing with the internet. What you hear, research.
Yeah,
take things with a grain of salt. Just because someone you like says something, do not take that as gospel, because we are all human beings and we are all intensely fallible.
Right.
And even with the best intentions, we can say some stuff that is just completely freaking wrong.
Yeah, we all do.
No, I mean, I think that's part of the condition, man. That's part of being a human being.
Yeah, the human condition. Absolutely.
Speaking of rabbit holes.
Yeah,
that's one. Yeah. But anyway, man, first off, I'd really like to thank you for coming out. I'd like to thank you for spending your time here. To people who are interested in you, what you do, your product, where can they find you? What do you have?
Yeah. So, of course, you can go to my website, Koycables.com, Koy, Koycables, Koycables. I make all sorts of high-end audio cable solutions. I do a lot of modding and things of that nature. including but not limited to driver mods, controller mods, like I was saying earlier, which has nothing to do with audio, detachable mods, things of that nature. I do physical mods, custom headband solutions, stuff like that. The core of it all is cables. If you need a custom cable for your headphones, if you need a custom set of interconnects for your amp and DAC, whatever you might need, just send me an email, support@koycables.com, or if you just want to talk about audio, you need purchase advice, anything like that, just let me know. I'll be happy to help.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, Zach.
Yeah. And real quick, before we cut off, we're going to talk about our sponsor for the podcast today.
Okay.
We are sponsored by Oak City Hot Sauce Company.
All right.
What a big surprise to anybody who's listening.
Hey,
no, Oak City Hot Sauce Company is my company. We make custom craft hot sauce. I don't know why I said custom. Well, we actually do custom batches, but we make craft hot sauce here in Raleigh, North Carolina. All of our recipes, ingredients, all of it, we strive for the absolute highest quality. We have been in Fortune 500 hotels. We're going to be at the Oxford Pepper Festival September 14th. So if you guys want to come out, we're going to have a booth there. But for any information about that, to watch the videos of us eating stupid hot peppers and reacting poorly, you can find us at Oak City Sauce on Facebook, oakcityhotsauce.com, or Oak City Hot Sauce Co. on Instagram. Thank you all for tuning in. Hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.